Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammi and Nathan Jaeger.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. In today's episode, we're talking about how to have conversations about money, how your stage of life impacts your financial priorities, how creating a big vision helps you get on the same page for your financial future. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Tonight we are welcoming Aaron and Bernadette Christie-David, who are co-founders of Atelier Wealth. Bernadette grew up on the south coast beaches of New South Wales and after completing her undergrad in accounting moved to Sydney. Bernie's focus is working with self-employed borrowers and self-managed super funds. Bernie was shortlisted for an industry award in the empowerment category, something that she is very proud of, and it sets a beautiful example for her daughter Sienna, because regardless of industry tenure and experience, hard work pays off. Aaron is a multi-award winning mortgage broker and within the last 5 years has been making waves in the broking industry. In 2019, he ranked 76th out of 18,000 in the Mortgage Professionals Australia's top 100. He is recognised as one of Australia's top 10 property specialists and was also winner of the Brokerage of the Year with a team of less than 5 staff at the Australian Broking Awards in 2019. As well as that, in 2018, he was named Young Professional of the Year by Mortgage and Finance Association of Australia, and he is the host of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. Welcome.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks so much.
Wow,
Thanks,
what a
Sammi.
rat.
Yeah. If I could,
I know.
I would, mate. Don't worry.
What a power couple. So before we jump in, I want to give context that you are both business partners and husband and wife.
Yes, we are.
And before we even jump further into that, Aaron, can you give us a rundown? What is a mortgage broker and why would someone want one?
Yeah, so a mortgage broker, we look at over 30 different banks. So when someone's going to buy their first home, upgrade their home, buy an investment property, and they want to know, interest rates, they want to know bank policy, for example, and someone to hold their hand right through that entire process, we're the people to hold your hand. And,
Awesome.
Traditionally people would go back to their bank. We're here to give a second opinion.
Yeah, cool. And how did you both end up in that industry? Maybe Bernie, do you want to give us your story?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a long-winded one, but Aaron himself had worked in marketing, always with banks, and specifically working with mortgage brokers. And we were on our honeymoon, I believe. And we were talking about life and, what do we want life for us as a married couple to look like? We sort of had two options. It was either move to New York and live that dream or start our own business and, work.
A different dream.
Yeah, two very different options.
Very different. I don't know how.
New York looks like a very easy option, right?
Yeah.
Looking back now, yeah.
That's right. Or work for ourselves, work hard now to build something for the future. And we thought, yep, New York will be great. We'll come back broke and we'll have to start all over again because we'll spend all our money over there. So, need to give this a go. I think it's something with Aaron's skill set, specifically with marketing and with my skill set with the accounting and HR background, we thought we would both be able to come together and bring some really, really unique skill sets together as a business.
And had you worked together in like a professional capacity before you jumped into starting your own business together?
Absolutely not. It was new to us, and even kind of starting out, Bernie still had her corporate role while I was getting the business off the ground. So Bernie was probably doing both at that stage, Sammi, which was doing her day job, and then after hours coming home and helping, or coming to the office at that stage and helping out with business as well. So weekends, there was just it was blurred lines between day job and after hours as well.
Yeah.
Lots of blurred lines. Then you have the husband and business partner hat, two different things. And then obviously you've now got a beautiful daughter. So you've got dad hat as well, mum hat. Yeah. How do you kind of manage those different dynamics of your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because at times it's not been easy. And it just means we've had to sit down and have a discussion and have a bit of a chat. For example, now with everything that's happening, we decided to take our daughter out of childcare. So I had to step out of the business for a little bit to care for her. And that's a decision we've had to make with the situations we're presented with. So I think you just take it as it comes. You can plan and you can prepare as much as possible, but ultimately life will throw you curveballs, and it's how you run with it as a couple. I think that is the true test.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you sort of touched on it there that you had some really big chats like while on your honeymoon. You know, for couples who are at the beginning of their relationship and they're starting to have some of those bigger chats about money or the future or buying property and what, you know, their wealth ambitions might be. Like, do you have any advice around how to have those conversations?
Yeah, they're not sexy conversations, right? In fact, I think what happens, science has shown that when we have these big, hard conversations, our brain kind of wants to shut down and we actually physically want to go to sleep when you have these really hard conversations. So next time,
really interesting, yeah.
Think about it, like when you have these really deep conversations, like, geez, I just need to lie down. And that's what your brain's way of protecting itself is what we've found, right, when we deal with couples a lot. And couples, sometimes opposites attract. So you've got this like weird mishmash sometimes, like yin and yang energy, which is someone's like the planner and someone's the dreamer, and then trying to get them to come together to go, hey, we need to map out our lives together. One person's going, live for tomorrow. One person's going, I want to plan to like an Excel spreadsheet. That's sometimes hard to do. And that's been our experience, because I live in La La Land and Bernie's like very methodical and very well planned out. So it's a great balance, and I think sometimes coming together on a page, you need to have those hard conversations as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were very lucky while we were engaged, we did a marriage preparation course, and one of the topics was finances. And there were basic questions that we were asked that were like, how much do you think is an appropriate amount to spend for a birthday gift for someone?
Or for family members.
And that's just like not
like who do you spend Christmas with, or who do you
That's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like the questions that I would never ask that to you directly unless I was forced to, when we were in this environment. So, and I think out of that we learned that our families also had very different relationships to money. My family was a lot, I'd say a lot more transparent, open, very open community. And Aaron's family were a little bit more guarded about talking about money. It was more that it was rude to talk about money. Yeah. And to talk about money openly, it was like, do you love money? It's not etiquette to talk about money.
It's not the done thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of families, it's kind of, you'll see in one camp or the other, which is we can talk openly about money. It's just one of those things, money's money. Whereas other people go, if you talk about money, then is it rude? It's not etiquette. And that was kind of our experience. So coming together was like we had to shake off our own preconceived notions and our own way of growing up and how we dealt with our relationship to money as well.
Yeah.
So when you talk about for anyone that's listening, it's going, that in itself, if you unpack what is your relationship to money growing up or your family's relationship to money, that would almost help to give you an insight to the other person's viewpoint about money. Did you guys use credit cards to grow up? And that was the done thing, whereas the other person may not have had any experience with like credit cards or debts or investment properties, for example.
And like who paid the bills? Like in my household, it was my dad, and in Aaron's household, it was your mum.
Yep.
So if we both come into that, I'm thinking, hey, he's got this, and Aaron's thinking, hey, I've got this.
Oh no.
I'm like, you answer the calls because I don't want to deal with this. Yeah.
So yeah, just having those discussions, and we were lucky we were in an environment we were forced to. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange sort of like bridge to kind of gap, isn't it? Like if someone's a real spender and they just like, money kind of flows in and out of their life without much thought. And then there's another person who's like a real saver and a planner and like, much more conscious with their money. Like, yeah, it brings up some interesting chats for sure. Like how you value what you spend your money on if you do actually spend it.
Yep. Spot on, Sammi. And that's the thing, everyone's wired so differently around money habits But until sometimes things hit the fan, you don't actually openly speak about it. And sometimes it's got to the point where there's credit cards that aren't being disclosed with each other or debts that aren't being disclosed. That almost leads to a negative outcome, which is resentment or embarrassment. And we're saying, I don't think you need to feel that way. End of the day, it's just money. If you have that viewpoint, you don't fear it. You don't fear money.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've heard you say is that indecision has never created wealth. So if you do have these two conflicting views, like how do you come to some of those big decisions, and what's the decision-making process?
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of talking about who owns what and who does what. So ultimately, who's the CFO in the couple? Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to sort of own it? And then for the other person to come in once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, whatever works for you as a couple, and talk about it and look at the numbers, look at the cash set that you've saved or the debts that you've paid off together. There are a couple of books that I definitely recommend couples read. One that was for us, it was life-changing, was The Richest Man of Babylon. Very, very old book, but just talks about very basic habits like saving 10% of your income as a minimum. And the other one, a more recent one, is The Barefoot Investor, which is a really good book. So reading those books will get you sort of speaking on the same sort of language, same money language.
And that's we're big Scott Pape Barefoot Investor fans. We've got the buckets going and working our thing out. But something that we sort of have struggled with is that we live in Sydney, we live in New South Wales, where property just feels astronomically expensive. We grew up in South Australia where property didn't have that, and still doesn't have that sticker price.
It still felt expensive while we were there, but now that we're in Sydney, it's just completely different.
How does a couple or a new relationship sort of, obviously the sooner that you can have those conversations about where you're going and what your intentions are for buying property, or what you want to do with your money, how do you sort of have those kind of conversations in an early stage relationship where you're like, oh, I've kind of been putting away this much money, how much money have you got? Like, when do you start to have those chats about pooling resources and how you do that and all those kind of things? Because obviously you don't want to turn up to a mortgage broker and go, oh, we've not had any of these conversations. We don't actually know. Like, what's the ideal for a client to come to you and what are the conversations they've already had?
Yeah, I think everyone's slightly different, Sammi. So it's not a fence-sitting answer, but we will have conversations with people that go, this is their first time having that real open, honest conversation in our office. They almost need a third party to facilitate that conversation because it's too awkward, or it gets a little bit uncomfortable at home, or it gets a bit even heated sometimes, right? So having someone that's kind of impartial to it maybe is what some couples need. Other couples where they go, when you're talking about making big decisions like property, we often say to people, don't rush into it. And because it's very hard to move, especially by selling the asset, right? Because if you made that decision, you're stuck with it. It can be a very expensive mistake, or it could be a very solid investment. But the mistake is very hard to undo financially. That will set you far backwards as opposed to bring you further up the kind of wealth curve, right? So where we're saying to people is don't rush it, have a chat. Property's still going to be here in 6-12 months' time, but wouldn't you rather, there's no point having a portfolio and being unhappy or dissatisfied with each other. Wouldn't you rather kind of get on the same page on the property side and then lay some good foundation, like a house, lay some strong foundations and then start to build accordingly, right? So if you take that same analogy, you can't build a house with two different blueprints. It's never going to work. If you take the same approach to building your wealth or building your assets or buying property, unless you're on the same page, it's never going to work. And I mean, you guys are very young. Bernie and I have been together for 10 years. Since we got married, we have moved suburbs once every year for the past 5 years. So
whoa. You are Marie Kondo experts throwing out stuff left, right and centre every 12 months.
Yeah. If it's not essential, we didn't carry it with us. But can you imagine if we tried to buy a home and we had such itchy feet? Like we didn't know where we wanted to live. Like we've lived in such different areas. We had great lifestyles. We got to explore all different parts of Sydney. And only the last kind of 2 years when we've moved out of Sydney down the coast, now we go, this feels like home to us and we want to put down roots here. But 5 years ago, we could never have imagined that would be down here. So if we'd bought, and we did that, we bought a property in Sydney with the view that we'd probably live in it, and then we didn't want to live in it anymore. So now it's, okay, sure, it's become an investment property. It was never bought with the intention to be an investment property for us. So imagine if that was not a great performing asset, that'd be an expensive mistake for us. It would have changed our entire plan. And that's what the other side to it can be sometimes, where if you're not really clear on where you want to live, or game changes like having a baby means we want to be closer to family. But if we're in Sydney, both our families are at least 1 to 2 hours away from us. That's logistically not possible, right? And if you're young, if you're new in your relationship, they're not sexy conversations about talking about having a baby. We're having got joint bank accounts while we're talking about babies, right? But sometimes having those hard conversations is where you get to a better place in your relationship.
And sometimes it just takes time. I think when you're early on in the relationship, it's what's the latest
restaurant to go to?
Cafe at the moment, but that used to be, and that was the highlight, and the relationships progress over time.
And that's like you touched on, it's a stage of life thing, isn't it, where your values can shift or what's priority can shift quite dramatically. Yeah, cool. So something that I wanted to sort of follow on from that is what are the benefits of having these conversations and starting to get on the same page about money and the future and buying property? Why should we be doing it?
I mean, property takes time to grow in value, right? Very adult conversations to be having, but and I mean you look at it from a very different point of view, Sammi, where you guys are from Adelaide. Property has a very different perception.
It does.
It's not a hobby where you go out looking at properties and going building a property portfolio like people like us in Sydney. Even Bernadette down the coast, they've got a very different view of property compared to when I grew up in Sydney, where it's go out, buy an investment property, and then keep buying, and get yourself up to the eyeballs perhaps. Whereas when it's buy a property, pay it down, and that's how they've been down the coast. That's how they've been raised, right? Yeah. No right or wrong here, but if you go to where your relationship, in line with the relationship, is where I'm going with that. Buying property can be very financially rewarding, but take the time to understand what are you actually trying to achieve here as a couple as well.
Could you repeat the question again, Sammi?
I guess the question is what are the benefits of having some of these conversations about property and about building wealth? What's the outcome? What are the outcomes that you see for clients who do the work and put in the effort and I guess make some hard decisions and have uncomfortable or potentially uncomfortable conversations, snooze-inducing conversations?
I think it's a shared vision of your lives together. And that sounds a little airy-fairy, but ultimately, if you're thinking, this is the person that I want to be with, and this is my person, what's our life going to look like in 10 years, in 20 years maybe? For Aaron and I, for us, our vision is 6 months to 12 months living in Italy, taking Sienna.
Ooh.
That sounds pretty appealing.
Drinking red wine, living in a villa in Tuscany. And that's why we work hard, and that's why we do what we do and make the sacrifices we've made, because we have that vision. So I think for me, it's getting, what does it look like for you? Some people it's travel, for some people it's owning their home outright, for some people it's being able to give back to their families. What is it for you as a couple that is going to get you through those sometimes tough times?
Yeah. That's true. I really resonate with the desire to be able to up and go and live somewhere else or be somewhere else for an extended period of time. And I guess that all of those things don't happen overnight. They do require planning and consideration, and and things are expensive. It can be an expensive plan to do that. And what is it that your life's still going to need to sustain while you're off drinking red wine in another country?
And I guess that's always been a sticking point for us as well around buying property is that, if we do have a house and a property in Australia and we do decide to go overseas or do decide to move, then we feel like it's
a big responsibility.
Yeah, it is a big responsibility.
And I mean, that's something that you could talk about, that if we do buy a property, we get it to a point where the loan is this much and the property is getting rent of this much, and the rent covers the mortgage repayment and it covers all of the rates, water, all those repairs and maintenance, and maybe even a small buffer. So whatever you need to do to get the mortgage in a position to that point where you're comfortable, then that's something you can talk about. Like their numbers, and you can start to write down and work towards, right? Like that makes it a little bit more achievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, having that shared vision and knowing why you're doing it, like what is it that you're working towards, changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it?
Completely. And just, when you're having those moments, Italy, remember?
Yeah. red wine.
And it's splashed up on at home. It's in the bathroom, right? We see it every day. So that just being front of mind, it's you get up, brush your teeth. It's that's keeping us going. That's our true north for what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's not just the 6 months in Italy. It's the steps that we need to take to get there. Okay, we need to buy our home. We need to pay this off. We need to have this much in savings. We need to have Sienna set up and learn some Italian. So there's all these different milestones that happen to get to that outcome is where we're going with it, right?
But it's obviously about having that grand vision visible to you, because you obviously have it in your own minds, but if you're saying that you've got it up as well and you can see it and see it every day as well, it does make such a big difference to actually achieving that.
We're telling you guys. So we have.
Yeah. When's the deadline? When's this happening? Should we?
This is the thing. We're kind of caught. We do it when Sienna's in high school, when she's at an age where she can remember it. We're when we've got the health as well. We've got the finances to maintain it. What about our business? So we've got these logistical parts where we go, okay, it'll work itself out, but we've got the grand vision to get there, and some of the mechanics just need to fall into place. Or we just go, let's just make it happen. Once we're over there, things will just work itself out.
Figure it out.
Yeah, it's a dreamer in me where I'm we'll figure it out. But there's obviously some type of.
I'll put a deadline.
Yeah.
I'll say 10 years.
10 years. Yeah. 2030.
2030.
2030 done.
Hey, so if you don't mind, I want to jump and sort of change gears a little bit. It's something that we touched on a little earlier. Is obviously you are both business partners, and then you are life partners as well, and then you parent together. How do you keep your relationship in a state of dating? How do you keep that romantic relationship alive?
It takes work, Sammy. It's like anything in life. It takes work. The dating now has probably got less glamorous, where it's it's at home on a Friday night and with Sienna, and we're just chilling out at home, the three of us, and we go, we don't get dressed up as much to go out for a nice restaurant meal, but at home, the three of us, that's what we worked for this week, and it's enjoyable. So I think,
I think that's what dating can look like, right? It doesn't have to be sexy. It can be really creating that quality time. But I guess with the two of you, do you have a process where you take off one hat and you put on the other, or is it just live?
I do.
Yeah.
This guy does not.
I'd be at dinner and I'd be still talking work. I don't care. There's no you talk about blurred lines. I will talk shop 24/7 if I have to. Then he's not tonight. So I've got nothing else to talk about. Which is
that probably does. Yeah, that probably does become difficult as well. Is if you're living and breathing your work and you are both working together. How do you keep the conversation alive, and how do you keep things interesting? I guess as well, if that is your whole life.
Yeah, I mean, it's about making sure you have other interests and hobbies. Reading. I've recently rediscovered my love of reading, watching good TV shows, making sure we have our connection with our friends as well, so we can keep talking about, our friends and the people that we love. So having elements where you're still your own person, I think is really important, because then you can bring that to the couple. I think is really important.
And I think, just knowing that time where we went out for dinners, we went out to clubs, we went out to like that stage has kind of moved. And I think we had a little mourning period when we were pregnant, when Bernie was pregnant, and we kind of shifted to that. We're bunkering down at home a little bit more, for example. That you kind of not mourn for it, but you kind of go, those were some good days, but life has changed a little. It's like life 2.0. And now,
just age and stage, right?
With a young baby, it's like, hey man, the wiggles and like trying to bring out some fun. I listen to in the car like all the time, right? And it's like, it's fun. So you learn to embrace that a little bit rather than kind of, I think at the start it was really hard. So like you want life to go back to how it was before, but no, it's moving now. And if you don't shift with it, it's going to make it really hard to change out of that previous gear that you were in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to circle back a little bit. You sort of talked about like talking shop forever, 24/7. But I know that your business is not just a business, right? Like you do some pretty special things for the world, using your business as that vehicle. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thanks, Sammi. Yeah, the heart of what we do is mortgages, right? So quite often this can be quite stressful for people. So what we wanted to find a way was, how do we use our business for good and do more good with our business, right? That was kind of that burning question that we had for us. And I think the penny dropped for us was when we had Sienna. And I opened up the cupboard one day and I just said, this child will not go without clothes for like the rest of her life.
Or go without
anything, right? We're not ultra rich. You look at the grand scheme of things, we've got plenty of food in the cupboard, we've got more meals, she's got plenty of love, we've got a roof over our heads. We're like in the top couple percentage in the world just on that net wealth.
Yeah.
And that's when it broke my heart, just to go, there are some babies out there that don't have clean nappies, that don't have clean clothes. I'm like, we need to do something about this. And that's when I said to them, I said, we need to use our business as a vehicle for finding ways to give back. And that's when we came across this idea of, okay, so we do home loans. How do we help people? And that's when we came across this idea of called home loans for the homeless. So instead of we might help people buy $2 million property, but instead of giving them a bottle of wine, what we now do is replace that bottle of wine or champagne with giving 30 nights of shelter to an underprivileged family. And so your family, our family, and someone else's family have all kind of won by doing business together. And that has then permeated into our team, into our clients, into our business partners. And then ultimately it's something that Sienna can look back on and go, hey, she was the conduit for it, but we did something that hopefully she's proud of us to achieve as well. And that's kind of what sparked that for us, Sammi.
Yeah, see, when you're using your business as a vehicle to do something so amazing like that, I think it kind of almost gives you permission to talk about it nonstop, right?
Yeah, look, it's a part of that business, and it's not the reason. Again, it's not the reason that people would choose us, or it's not the reason to do business. But it's kind of like just our way to go, hey, there's more to life than doing a home loan. There's ways that we can think bigger and think globally rather than our little business.
So I guess that was a super speedy conversation that flew for me. Before we kind of round out, I want to ask what's probably like your number one tip, maybe one from each of you, like around money and having conversations and I guess merging values. Like what's the number one tip? Like be kind to each other, or like have understanding of where the other person's coming from, or like, I don't know, what's the big takeaway?
Mine would be no judgments. And that's one of our values in our business. We tell that to people whenever they call us, go, hey mate, look, no judgments here. Because everyone comes from a different level of experience or confidence around money. And I think for us, that's the same thing. Like if they've had debts, if they've not been great with money, okay, mate, it's happened. You can't change it. Just move on. That's kind of my advice.
Mine is a little bit opposite. I was
Judge everyone, judge hard.
judgment, but don't be too kind to each other. Like, you are going to have to like ruffle each other's feathers a bit, because you've both come from completely different families and attitudes towards money, and it is going to be a bit tough. Like, they're not easy conversations to have. So know that it will be a bit uncomfortable, but get through this friction, and it's just Italy will be the end of it.
Yeah, I guess it is about starting with that grand vision, that end goal, and then working out individually what, and as a couple, then how best to proceed from
and
that.
holding both players in the team accountable to those decisions that move you towards that bigger goal.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. Well, I do want to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. So I got heaps out of it. And maybe Nathan and I will have to reconsider aspirational Sydney property. And when we're ready, we will be knocking on your door.
Nate, Sammy, don't give up on it. It's going to happen.
It will.
But like you sort of touched on, at Fuel Collective, one of our values is to be the change. And that's around being the change for yourself in your own life, but also taking accountability for the change that you can make in the world. So to say thank you via our partnership with B1G1, we're providing 6 training sessions for young parents in India, which will help them make some really informed decisions about their around their child's nutrition, immunisation, spacing of children, and contraception. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sammy.
Well, any final parting words?
No, I mean, mine's it's just money, right? Comes and goes.
Yeah.
And to finish on that one, family and your health are the most important things. So I think now everyone is becoming very acutely aware of that. So hold those that you love dear and near, and just take care of yourselves.
Yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you later. Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.